So good morning and welcome back to another crumbs under the table. Just going to take a temperature. Oh dear, a bit cold. I just thought I'd give you a quick kind of coffee tip. One of the things that's kind of interesting. Oh, hang on, I'll just make sure this is focused on me. Hi. One of the things that's interesting is if you add milk to your coffee, which I don't. I drink it the way God intended to, without milk. But if you do add milk, it actually keeps your coffee hotter for longer. I suppose the physicist in me reckons that must be because adding all that fat kind of reduces the specific heat capacity, whereas it increases the specific heat capacity, makes it better at holding heat for longer anyway. If you're going to take a long time drinking a cup of coffee, add milk. I take too long when I do these videos. It's nice when coffee is hot. This one's just losing it a bit, as I prove with my readout. Anyway, that's got absolutely nothing to do with this morning's topic. What I thought I'd do this morning is actually introduce a character that is one that we often forget about or don't notice. So the Gospels often, I say the Gospels often, they don't. So John's Gospel tells us about someone called Clopas. His wife is there at the cross when Jesus is crucified. Luke's Gospel tells us about a disciple called Cleopas, who's on the road to Emmaus with somebody else. And they're actually both the same people. You can kind of normally work that one out. Clopas, which is kind of more Aramaic sounding, and Cleopas, which is the Greek version, the Greek name that sounds most like the Hebrew name. But actually they're also mentioned in the other Gospels too, that same character. The Mark and Matthew refer to somebody who's the father of James the Less. His name is Alphaeus. But you see, that Mary who is at the cross, who's the wife of Clopas, is also referred to as the mother of James and a guy called Joseph. And this James is the James the Less that we're talking about. So she's married to someone called Clopas, but he's called Alphaeus in the synoptic gospel, in Mark and Matthew. And that's a nice little kind of gives us a little bit of insight into the way things work, because at the heart of it all is a Hebrew stroke Aramaic name. It's quite a common one actually, Chalphai, which has got that guttural sound, like if you can say it if you're Welsh. I'm actually 3/8 Welsh, but I can't really say it. But it's in there in kind of Welsh names, Llandudno and so on. And if you're coming from a language that doesn't use a guttural, you probably are then, it's difficult to say. And actually, as you translate, therefore, that Hebrew Aramaic into Greek, you've got a couple of options, because Greek, neither does it have the sound in the language, nor does it have the letters in the alphabet to represent it. So how do you do it? So you do it one of two ways. You either make it a hard cl, as in Clopas, or you make it a soft al, because the two together would kind of make chal. And so Chalphai becomes Clopas or Cleopas. Cleopas is simply the proper Greek version of a name that sounds most like the kind of Greekized version of the Aramaic name. So Luke, who's writing for a Greek-speaking audience, although he himself can speak very good Hebrew, makes the name Cleopas, because they'll get that one. It's like, it's you understand that. And it's the same as John's Clopas. But although he only makes a brief appearance in the list of the name of the apostles, it's also the same guy as Alphaeus. Now, why? So actually, he's a character that appears in all four Gospels, which makes him actually quite significant. And the early church actually tells us who he is. He's Joseph, the father of Jesus. He's Joseph's brother. So there at the cross is Jesus' uncle on his father's side and his wife, Mary. And Mary becomes one of those women who becomes a witness to the resurrection. She goes to the tomb on the first morning. She encounters the angels. Mary Magdalene encounters Jesus himself, but she's one who encounters the angels. And suddenly, as we start to kind of put the things together and we start to imagine into it, we start to see detail that's not explicitly explained in the Gospels, but is there implicitly, starts to come alive. Because that character, I don't know if you've ever wondered, why did Jesus appear to those disciples who we've never really heard of before on the road to Emmaus on his resurrection morning? They're not just any old people; they're close family. And actually that helps to make sense of the story of the book of Acts, because in the book of Acts, Jesus' family is suddenly in the mix again. James, his brother, who last time we heard about him in Mark's Gospel explicitly, is part of the family who's worrying about Jesus' kind of in mental health because he's getting swamped by the crowds and he can't even kind of connect with family and can't just do the normal things that a normal human being is doing. And so they have that concern. And then they kind of start. There's even an interaction where it sounds like Jesus' family is kind of saying, "Well, what you playing at?" Which I think we're misreading, but where effectively they release Jesus to focus his ministry in the south. Halfway through the Synoptic Gospels, his brothers say to him, if you really want to make an impact, you should do it down at the festivals. You're not doing it down there. So Jesus relocates down into Judea. So Jesus' family is far more interrelated with his ministry than sometimes we realise. And here is this key character. And the angels on the resurrection morning, when they meet those women who come to the tomb, turn around to them and say, go and tell his disciples and his brethren. Because actually that word brethren encompasses his family. They need to know. And which now might start to explain what Cleopas is doing on the road to Emmaus. Because it's an unusual little interaction he has with Jesus, although he doesn't recognise him yet as Jesus. Their eyes are blinded, it said. But they're heading up to, and they start saying, have you heard what's gone on and how they've crucified Jesus? And then they say, and actually, and even some women in our company are saying they saw an angel who said he's kind of risen again. Well, this is only about an hour or so after that has actually happened. So Mary has gone to the tomb with the other women. The angels have said, go and tell his disciples, his brethren. They've headed back, and she's told Cleopas, and now Cleopas is on the road to Emmaus. Well, why? Well, obviously because he's trying to track down the members of the family. They're taking the angelic message seriously. They've seen enough around Jesus that they take these things very seriously when they happen. And so Cleopas and his companion are on that road, and they are a couple that Jesus meets because they are close family. And of course he turns them around. Why are they on the road? Well, probably because they are members of Jesus' extended family who in fear after the crucifixion, and because they're members of the extended family, it just feels like Jerusalem is not the place to be. We can't really enjoy the celebration of Passover. It's a miserable time. Let's head back. And Emmaus is on the route that takes you most directly to Galilee. It's not on the east side, the pilgrim route, but that would be a pretty miserable route to take, and it also takes longer. You don't want to talk to people who are celebrating Passover when you feel low. So it looks like Cleopas and his companion are zooming up to Galilee, perhaps trying to catch up with members of Jesus' family to tell them what's gone on. The first thing just to notice is how there's an unintended coincidence here then between John's Gospel and Luke's Gospel. Because between the two of them, we start to realise why these characters are important, which we wouldn't know otherwise. They didn't plan it to prove anything, but actually it shows that both are key eyewitnesses. They've inadvertently told us something that fit together very compellingly to explain something. A testimony which the early church then gives us through Eusebius, who's quoting an earlier historian, Hegipus, who's early 2nd century, so around 100 and something AD. And Eusebius is about half a generation after that. That this is Jesus' family, and actually they tell us a bit more. They say that the companion with him is Jesus' cousin, a guy called Simon or Simeon, who the early church records for us takes over leading the church in Jerusalem after James, Jesus' brother, is executed. And actually the early church tells us that he is the leader of the church in Jerusalem as the Romans come to destroy Jerusalem, and he leads the church out based on the prophecies of Jesus and what they're watching for to safety. So he becomes a key character in the early church, the early development. Simeon and Cleopas, Jesus' uncle, who therefore becomes, if you like, the spokesperson into Jesus' wider family, which helps explain how come by the time we get to the book of Acts, his brothers seem to be much more integrated with the church than they seem to be in the Gospels. So I know everything I'm sharing this morning, in one sense, it's not gospel truth, but it's truth that we extrapolate from the gospel. And I just kind of want to finish with a kind of a quick thought, really, because the the best way in which humans assimilate information is via stories. It's not via data sheets. Data sheets are the way computers take on information. Humans do it via stories. We like to hear a good story, and a story can embed masses of information that you don't even say, just something in the structure of it. And every child, to every old adult, loves a good story. So God so loved the world, he didn't just send the Ten Commandments and a bunch of facts. He sent his son to live a life that creates a story. And the reason stories are so engaging is because they invite us to imagine the bits they don't say. And so as we kind of look at all of these things and we come up with ways of filling in those gaps, what we find is those stories become alive to us. Which does mean I can't go around saying, actually, the Bible says that Cleopas is Jesus' uncle, but we've put that together from other sources and we've imagined into it. So why is he on the road to Emmaus? Well, the Bible doesn't tell us, but we can imagine into it. So by imagination, the story becomes much more alive to me, more exciting to me. So my kind of final thoughts this morning as we finish our coffee together is don't be afraid at speculating, because that, I think, is why Jesus has come the way he has. Right, way back I talked about he doesn't write his own gospel because he wants to kind of create a story with space in it, because that encourages us to put ourselves in there, to turn our eyes in our imagination and fill in the detail, to actually to make the Bible a part of our kind of research project for life. And you can go on doing it right the way through your life. You never get bored with it. It's totally fascinating, totally interesting. I've taught more on these things as a kind of a Bible teacher than we're doing here this morning, but you can look at those things. But I just want to encourage you to start doing it. Use your imagination and let the Gospels come alive to you in new ways. So that's all for this morning. I'm going to finish my coffee, which is probably pretty cold now. Maybe I should have added milk. Yeah, a bit cold. One day I'm going to have a cappuccino when we do this, but that's not today. So see you next time.